Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Fleiss, and I'm the director of the NYU Summer Program for Kids. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar series here at the Child Study Center. Today I'll be speaking with you on tips for choosing the right summer program for your child. You can submit questions at any time today by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel. That's on the right side of your screen. We will answer questions at the end of our presentation. So as parents, we want our children to have a fun and positive experience during the summer. After all, summer equals fun, a time of less stress, greater ease, no pressure. Most parents, along with their children, look forward to the summer when the schedule is lighter and more relaxed. There is no homework to do, fewer things to schedule, fewer deadlines to meet. If a child's summer camp experience is less than ideal, then the vision of a carefree summer is lost. In my talk today, I'd like to offer some ways to help increase the likelihood that the summer program or camp experience you choose for your child will be the right one for him or her. There is so much information at our fingertips these days as the internet is loaded with information. Indeed, this can be extremely helpful, but at the same time it can be overwhelming, with many programs sounding like the right one for your child. So having a few tips to help narrow down the questions you have and keep a focus on the end goal for your child could be helpful in choosing a program most suitable for him or her. I would like to focus my talk today on choosing a program for your child with special needs. Children with special needs often have unique and sometimes have many difficulties which need to be factored into the selection of a summer program. This can present a challenge for parents seeking to find a program that will meet all of their child's needs. Although I'll be speaking to you about the selection of a program for your child with special needs, much of what I will speak about today is applicable to neurotypical children as well, and I hope will nevertheless be helpful. In my talk today, I'd like to cover 4 areas: where to start in choosing the right summer program, some tips to help guide the selection of a summer program, once narrowed down, determining if the program is indeed right, and after the program is selected, some steps that follow. So to begin, a first question to ask yourself is, what kind of summer experience does my child need? This question often presents itself upon reflection of the kind of year your child has had. For example, a child with a diagnosis of ADHD and who has had trouble following directions, behaved impulsively, has been emotionally reactive, or had trouble in group situations, the priority might be to working on improving his or her behavior. For a child who has an autism spectrum disorder and has struggled to make and keep friends, the priority might be on social skill development. For the second grader whose reading skills have been lagging, the priority might be to shore up reading skills, using the summer to remediate skills so that the transition to third grade is a bit easier. I'd like to offer a few tips to guide the process of selecting a summer program. A first tip is to use your child's interests and strengths to inform. For example, what does your child like to do for fun? Does he or she have any special interests? For example, your child might love sports, technology, nature, performing arts. So choosing a program with an emphasis on his or her strengths or interests is important, but the program need not only be limited to his or her interests. Building on your child's strengths and likes while also providing exposure to other activities will provide a broader experience for him or her. For example, if your child expresses a distaste for sports, perhaps his or her dislike of sports comes from having had a negative experience in the past. Perhaps he or she was on a team which was overly competitive, or perhaps he or she is not athletic, and so he or she feels that he or she is not good enough. He may simply think or believe he does not like sports, but has never had a positive enough experience for him to know for sure. So it's important to look past what your child says and consider why he or she is saying that. A second tip is to know which type of setting works best for your child and why. Does a more structured or less structured environment and setting work best for your child? Consider your child and how he or she does in day-to-day activities during the school year. For example, is he a child who does better with a predictable schedule and a reliable routine? Does your child do better with a full schedule of activities? Or does he or she need time for when there is nothing to do? Have you noticed that at times your child says that he or she longs for some downtime? Structure and routine and the busyness of the schedule, the degree of downtime, are all important to consider when selecting a program. Structure and routine helps many children to feel more comfortable, transition easier from one activity to the next, and reduces anxiety. Other children may feel too confined by having to follow a day-long schedule and prefer less structure and more free choice. A third tip to consider is the previous camp experience that your child had and what worked or didn't work and why. Was there any feedback provided to you about your child from the past camp director? What was your experience like? Did you feel that you were treated well as a parent and had your needs met? Were there any specific issues that were disappointing to you? Would your child return to the camp if given the opportunity to do so? This is important. If your child says he or she would love to go back, then that tells you it was a positive experience for him or her. And a fourth tip is to engage your child in a conversation about what he or she would like to do for the summer. Ask for your child's input and listen to what is shared. Listening from your child's perspective without correcting his or her experience helps you to know what it was really like for him or her. For example, if your child says that he did not make any friends or kids were mean to him, this might help you to understand that he or she may need more help to make friends or for counselors to pay closer attention to peer interactions. Engaging in your child in a conversation does not mean that you're giving in to him or giving him or her decision-making power. And a fifth tip is to speak to others who know your child to get their input. Asking the previous camp director how your child did in the program could be useful information to guide the process. Speaking to your child's current teacher could also serve you well. After all, your teacher knows your child for the whole year in structured and non-structured settings, knows how your child does well socially, and could really be a good resource to guiding your decision-making. In addition, if your child has a therapist or counselor with whom he or she is working, certainly involve that person in the process of figuring out what's best for your child this summer. Once you've reflected on how your child has been doing, used your good instincts to prioritize his or her needs at this point in time, and you've gathered the information that you need by considering your child's strengths and interests, knowing the type of setting that works best for your child, considering previous camp experiences, having conversations with your child, and seeking input from others who know your child well, then the research can begin. And as I mentioned before, there is so much research that you can do, even just simply using the web. But using the web is not the only way to get information about camp and summer programs. Camp referral sources are also good. Speaking to other parents, of course, is a good resource and way to get information. Attending camp fairs or special needs organizations, such as CHADD meetings, where parents talk about different resources that they've experienced and have had experience with. Using Attitude Magazine or Include NYC.org, Autism Speaks, Tourette's Association, all of these and many more can be considered good referral sources. Once you've narrowed down, after doing the research, once you've narrowed down to a few specific programs that you'd like to look further into, it's important to drill down and ask more specific questions of the programs to make sure it is a good fit for your child. Some important questions to ask is whether or not the program is primarily a mainstream program that accepts children with special needs or primarily special needs program. The difference being a special needs program where there are primarily children with special needs can be a real opportunity for your child to feel like he or she is with other kids who are very similar to him or her. Kind of levels the playing field, if you will, and helps your child feel like he doesn't have to always be on his best behavior in order to make friends or keep friends, but rather can be himself and feels that others will understand. Also ask how long the program has been around. New programs are great, and there are many new programs starting over the last few years. I've certainly seen a number of programs come into being that hadn't been around before. Being with a new program can certainly be a positive experience, although a program which has been around for a long time can offer you the experience, all the kinks have been worked out, and the knowledge that people have been doing it for a while and really should know what they're doing and should do it well. What is the focus or philosophy of the camp? This is important because you want it to match your philosophy as well, and what kind of environment you would like for your child to have exposure to. Asking how many kids attend and how they're grouped. How does the staff get to know your child? Is there any formal orientation or a way that the counselors and staff can reach out to your child to really get a sense of who he or she is before he comes into the program? Of course, knowing what the activities are that are offered, if they change on a day-to-day basis, and how structured the program are important beginning questions to ask. Learning about the staff and who will be working with your child on a daily basis is essential. Knowing what the staff hierarchy is. This is important so you know who you can go to for what. What kind of training do the counselors receive? Are they high school or college students? Mainstream camps often have high school students working as counselors, which can work very well with kids who have who don't have many needs and are not special needs campers. But in my experience, counselors who are a little bit older, have a bit more maturity, and have more specific training, understand kids with special needs better. How involved in the activities are the counselors? Are they standing on the side kind of directing things, or are they in the activities with the children? For kids with special needs, my feeling is that the counselors really need to be in there with the children to guide and support them in their interactions with other children, because they often need help navigating those situations. Is the director on the premises? How can you get in touch with the director, and is he or she accessible to parents' questions and needs? And how will you know how your child is doing? What's the communication like? Again, speaking with a parent of a child who attended the program will give you some of the answers to these questions, and asking whether or not you can visit the program when it's in session could be very helpful for you to get a lay of the land and get a sense of how things are run. It's important also, I find, for parents to ask about specific questions and how they are handled. This way, parents have a heads up, especially if they are concerned about some of the behaviors that their children exhibit that might be problematic at times in a camp setting. You'd like to know how these situations are handled and find out ahead of time. So, for example, if your child reports that he or she has been teased, how is that handled? If a child is disrespectful to a counselor or refuses to participate or follow directions, what do the counselors do? What's their protocol on helping kids in these situations? If a child wants to call home or is feeling sad, how do they intervene? If your child is not eating his or her lunch, a lot of times children with special needs are on medication, and eating lunch can be a real challenge. But that's something that needs to be monitored. If you wanted the counselors to encourage or urge your child to eat their lunch, is there that level of support at the camp where they can do that for you? If your child is afraid to go into the pool, what's their practice regarding that? Do they just allow the child to sit on the sidelines and wait until pool time is over, or do they know how to encourage children to become more comfortable and eventually get into the pool in a safe and supportive way? And in this day and age, parents are often asking me as a camp director, what's the policy on electronics and cell phone use? So that's an important question to ask. How much information about my child should be shared? Now, of course, this is an individual preference that parents have. Some parents are really comfortable sharing lots of information. Other parents are a little bit more guarded about it. Applications usually ask parents to share a little bit, write a little summary about their children, what their concerns are, what their challenges are. I find that it's often in the child's best interest for the director to know as much information about the child as possible. Sharing also what works and what doesn't work is very helpful. So this way the camp staff have a heads up and if they can anticipate a challenging situation but know what will work best, they can head off a problem that might emerge from a situation not being handled well. And it's so important to focus on your child's strengths and positive personality characteristics. In my experience, all children, even children who have challenging behaviors, are adorable, and they have, just wonderful personalities. And sometimes the behaviors and the special needs don't necessarily allow that part of the child to shine. Sharing any concerns you have about peer relations can provide a heads up. And in special needs programs, perhaps that can be a real focus on helping your children to make friends and facilitating appropriate and positive peer engagement. Informing the director that your child takes medication is important, especially when it's the summertime and it's warm. Some medications can affect children in such a way that children need to stay hydrated and need to have something in their system. Informing the director about the medication that your child takes, and of course the reasons for the medication, is really important. Parents often ask me when I'm meeting with them whether or not they should keep their child on medication for the summer or give their child a medication holiday. And again, this is a question that can best be answered on an individual basis. It really depends on the child, what the symptoms are that the medication is treating, and how well the child will do off medication. It's important for you to keep in mind what your goals are for your child's summer experience and whether or not your child will be able to achieve those goals without medication. This is a very important conversation, and it would be very useful to have it with your child's doctor or therapist. And the questions to ask are whether or not your child will be able to function optimally without the medication. And that might be determined by the level of support the camp has in place, if there is some sort of behavioral system in place or a really excellent staff-to-child ratio that can provide the support that's needed if your child is struggling because he or she is not on the medication. If your child's social, behavioral, or emotional challenges will impede his or her success because he is not on medication, then that's something to really keep in mind. And whether or not your child will be able to get along with peers and adults without medication is important. Again, whether or not the summer is time for a medication holiday is an important and big question to ask, but I think it has to be factored into all the other goals that you have in mind for your child, and whether or not the overall experience will be positive, because that's what you're going for. So once a program has been selected, here are some ways to facilitate a smooth transition. And I often find that a smooth transition into the program can really bode well for how things continue. So before the program even starts, show your child the website and discuss it with your child. Share your enthusiasm with your child about the program, the activities, the staff. Help your child to know what to expect. Describe a typical day for him or her so he understands how the day will unfold and what the schedule is like. If at all possible, try to have your child connect with one counselor before the start of the program. Having that one connection before the start of the program can be really helpful, so that on the first day, your child will already know that there's one person he is already familiar with. If possible, visit the location of the program before the first day. Children, when they're young, of course, have a hard time imagining what the actual facility looks like, and giving them this concrete experience before the first day can help them know what to expect and feel a level of comfort. And invite questions from your child. Kids always amaze me when they ask questions, and often they're asking questions about things that we did not think of, but certainly they had. And once the program begins, I think it's important to check in with the director or the lead counselor after the first week. Check in with your child about the activities, counselors, and peers. Ask specific questions, like who did you play with today? Did you play baseball? Did you go swimming? Were there any songs that were sung? Asking your child about the day in a more specific way might give you more specific answers. As we know, often when we're asking kids, how was your day? They often say fine or good. Doesn't really tell us much. I always say to parents as well that sometimes when parents offer a bit about their day, it sort of primes the child for sharing about his or her day. Asking your child if he or she is having fun seems like a simple question, but I think it's a good question to ask. And after all, the summer is supposed to be fun, and fun is what we're going for. So asking your child if he's having fun is a good question to ask. And then monitor your child's experience. I maintain that it's important to have regular contact with the staff. No news is not necessarily good news. I can tell you how often parents have told me that they thought everything was going fine until the end of the summer when the director said, "I'm so sorry, but it did not work out so well," and the child was not invited back to camp. This is very painful to hear. Parents are often they often feel blindsided and really very devastated to hear that it didn't work out when all along they thought it was going just fine. Because again, the child may not be sharing all that's going on with their experience. So maintain regular contact with the staff. Speak with a point person, establish one from the get-go, whether it's the lead counselor or the director or another, and inquire about specifics. Did my child engage with peers? Has he or she made even one friend? Did he or she participate in all the activities, whether some that they set out on? And have there been any specific issues with another peer or counselor? So after the summer, and you're reflecting on whether or not the program was right for your child, some questions to ask yourself was whether or not the program met your expectations. Was it the experience promised, either by the director, by the website? Were the goals that you had identified for your child met? Did your child like the activities, make friends, connect with the counselors? These are important. What parents and kids often say about camp experiences that are positive are that they really enjoyed the activities, they did make some friends, and they felt really attached to the counselors. Relationships are key, and that will help your child have had a really successful and memorable experience. So thank you for your attention. We now have a time to have some questions answered. So one question that has come in from a listener: how do I evaluate if a camp is well suited for a 6 to 7-year-old who is shy and anxious? So if you have a 6 or 7-year-old shy or anxious little child, I think it's important for the camp for you to have that conversation with the camp director, saying, just as you said now, that my child is shy and anxious, how do you handle this kind of situation? What I would say is that they need to understand that kids with anxiety and who are shy should not really be forced or pushed into situations. They need to be gradually exposed to the situation. It might mean having a conversation with the counselor ahead of time. It might mean meeting a child beforehand so that that anxious child can pair up or buddy with a child and go into the camp day having the support of that peer. They need to understand, parent needs to communicate what particular situations make the child most anxious or shy and put added support in those situations. I think what's really the take-home message is that there's got to be an understanding on the part of the camp of how this presents itself, and kids who are reluctant to participate are not just being difficult, but they're having some difficulty and need support, and they need a slow, gradual transition into the activities, feeling brave and confident and supported as they develop more confidence. A second question is, my son had a negative experience last year at sleepaway camp. How do I help him have a different experience this year? So this is an important question to ask, and it's certainly a very thoughtful parent who's asking it. Certainly you don't want another negative experience to occur, so learning from that experience is really important, and putting measures in place to prevent it from happening again is key. So it depends on the kind of negative experience that your child had at sleepaway camp. One negative experience could be excessive homesickness. That's often something that can make it hard for kids to return to a sleepaway camp the next summer. So if your child experiences a great deal of homesickness, having a conversation with the director about what the policy is for children with homesickness. If it seems to have been more extreme than what is typical, which is for typical homesickness, children usually feel uncomfortable missing their home the first couple of days, but as they get gradually more involved in the activities, meet more friends, get connected to the counselors, the homesickness gradually dissipates. If for your child that it persisted over the course of the whole sleepaway camp experience, then having some more frequent supports in place could be very helpful. Having a plan ahead of time, maybe speaking to a therapist with the child so that they can learn how to, they can understand what homesickness is all about, where it comes from, and measures to take to help it dissipate is really important. If it was another negative experience, a different negative experience, perhaps peer-related, where your child was perhaps bullied or a counselor was not kind or dismissive of your child, it's important to speak to the director directly about what happened, and again, ask for a plan of what would happen if this were to surface again. Letting your child know that you're taking his experience seriously and doing whatever you can to change it so that it's positive is key. And also involving your child in the conversation, whether if it is speaking with the director about what happened and measures that will be taken to prevent it from happening again the second summer, involving your child so he knows that there are adults that are paying attention to what happened and ensuring that they're heading it off before anything like that would happen again. Question 3, what if the camp is strict about kids calling home? So camps can be strict about kids calling home for a couple of reasons. One, kids may be calling home because they're feeling a little bit like they're missing their parents and they want to just touch base. They also may feel that by calling home, it's taking the child away from the activity, or that if one child is calling home, that other kids may also want to call home. I think understanding the reason for the policy, because it could be any one of those things and maybe others that I'm not referring to, is important so that you can understand from the campus perspective why they have that policy in place. I would suggest speaking to the director and saying that your child may need a few extra phone calls and maybe having it more structured so that it's at the end of, it's at a certain time during the day so that it's scheduled. It's for a certain amount of time, maybe just a couple of minutes, and that it's not increased, that it doesn't increase in frequency. So having a set time, set schedule, understanding the policy are ways to address this desire for your child to call home. Question 4, regarding ADHD, attention deficit disorder, what type of camps are better suited for this type of child? Well, as the parent who's writing this might already know, that ADHD can be mild, moderate to severe. It can be a child can have the inattentive subtype or the combined subtype where the child is more hyperactive and impulsive. Types of camps, a type of camp that's suited for this type of child could be a program that's similar to the program that we run here at the NYU Child Study Center, which is the summer program for kids. The camp that I run is primarily focused to address the needs of children with ADHD. These children with this diagnosis often have trouble with paying attention, sustaining attention, rule following, maintaining engagement. They interrupt a lot. They might also be negative attention seeking. They might have trouble staying engaged in an activity long enough to experience success. So having a child at a program that understands the challenges of kids with ADHD and then also works to mitigate those challenges and address those issues in a way that's positive for the child. That would be the kind of program. It would be a program that's structured, probably also a program that has a point system or a reward system in place, because we know that kids with ADHD can be highly motivated by rewards and help them to make good choices in the moment. So a camp like that would be best suited for a child with ADHD. Okay, well, thank you so much. On behalf of the Child Study Center, I'd like to thank you for joining me today. Once you leave the webinar, you'll receive a survey, and we would appreciate if you would complete it. You'll also receive a follow-up email within a day or two with a link to a recording of today's presentation. We hope you can join us for our next webinar entitled Better Than Barbie, Raising Teens with a Positive Body Image with Dana Galler, Dr. Dana Galler. That's on Tuesday, June 5th at 1 p.m. Thanks so much and have a great day.